that fantastic one. Now we have another stellar performance from another amazing and phenomenal performer. Her name is Pilani Bubu. She is an award-winning singer-songwriter. She's a television host and inspired speaker, as well as a creative entrepreneur and coach. All right, you are not ready for what she's about to give us. Pilani Bubu, take over. I don't know if you're aware, Pilani, but you're muted. So if you can just hear your beautiful voice.
Dry, barren dirt roads, the ancient compass of where my people walked. Barefoot, I'm told, wore their loincloths with pride, told stories of old, and anywhere they would ride. They danced all night, they talked all night, they sang all night, ancient as the celestial sky, guided by the moon, none of the western gloom, not a word such as soon, only nature's bloom. No borders, they roamed free, no orders, only our free will. The dung beetle is the doctor of the road, they say. One more time. My people were never lost. Heathens they were not. Nature's help at their side. Natives with pride. They made good of the soil. The land still ours. We were happy to toil. Time was never too soon. Guided by the moon. Knew no western gloom. Only nature's bloom.
absolutely phenomenal. You are great. We can't wait to be hearing you throughout the session. So please make sure you stay tuned as she'll be performing after every single speaker. If you want to find out more about who she is and the things that she's done, you can head on over to our chat section over there. Nati has given us a nice little brief bio about who she is and the things that she has done. So we're going to be hearing more of her throughout the session. So let's get into today's session. It's titled Reimagining New Narratives. And it is a storytelling session. I'm very excited because some of our speakers are going to be reciting some of their stories. And I hear that we might actually have an exclusive here. So very exciting news. And it really is about how we can transform ourselves as well as our society through our narratives. And without any further ado, I'd like to introduce our first speaker for today. His name is Muti, and he has combined expertise and experience in social history, in data science, technology, and cultural heritage. He designs and delivers projects and tells stories that challenge the status quo in Malawi to bring lasting change. And although he is Malawian, he does say that he is indeed in Switzerland and he's going to bring us some chocolate. So I hope he keeps his promise. So Muti, you can take over.
Thanks very much. It's good to be here, and thanks for tuning in, everyone. I would like to, before I get into it, can I get my slides up, please? Noni, I can't see my slides.
All right, so I think Kuma is working on getting the slides up.
Yeah, sure. That's fine. That's fine.
She is? All right, fantastic. So you can do a quick little bio of who you are, where you are, and why you're in Switzerland in the meantime while we're waiting for your slides.
Sure. So I'm in Switzerland. I've been here since June, going back home next week, Friday. We came here to give birth. My wife is Swiss British. So we do come here quite a few times. But I'm based in Malawi. Born and raised in Blantyre, Malawi, but currently living in Lilongwe, the capital of Malawi. Brief bio about me: storyteller, filmmaker, trained in Cape Town, Big Fish in Cape Town. Shout out to Big Fish. Author since 2000. Just storyteller. I think storyteller captures it quite nicely.
Yeah.
As it says, I'm passionate about engaging with platforms that we use to share knowledge. And these platforms are always very they're always dynamic. We don't always try to keep up, but I try to keep up, and that explains maybe the data science part of my storytelling.
I think your slides are up, so you can get into your presentation, and then straight after that, then you can
sure.
some of your new content.
Sure. So some of my highlights include presenting in 2014 at TEDx Lilongwe, agitating for the use of Wikipedia to try and balance representation across the world, and also just engaging with this notion called Wiki Africa. These are editors across Africa trying to improve content on Wikipedia, despite the challenges around that, Wikipedia being, I think, the most used platform for people to access knowledge. So Wiki Africa exists really to try and balance the challenges that people from the North, and I'm being simplistic here, people from, say, continental Europe or the USA or Canada are the ones who are mostly writing about Africa. So Wiki Africa tries to balance that by really reaching out to Africans to try and own our own narrative, to try and own our own stories despite the challenges. Another highlight is I think being guest faculty for Sierra College, which is a top liberal college in the US. I designed and taught a course called Understanding Human Involvement in Cultural and Historical Context, really zooming into Malawi, bringing the history and the current affairs, and trying to move a trajectory out of that. Another highlight of mine is winning an award, the Pierre Gint Literary Award in 2005, and as is being the Goethe Institute's Moving Africa Scholar in 2011. I've been telling stories. It's quite a bit now. I've got a few books published. Some are available on Amazon. If you search for my name on Amazon, you might find some titles there. Telling stories mostly because I love telling stories, but also seeing the need for us to tell our own stories. Can I have the next slide, please? Next slide. So my approach towards storytelling, I run an entity called Logos Open Culture, which is at the intersection of computation or computing plus arts, culture, heritage. It's trying to find a space where these two strands meet and can propel them forward together. There's a bunch of us in Logos Open Culture. There's me, there's Rachel, with a background in English literature and anthropology. There's Mona with a background in anthropology, and then there's John Wanda. John Wanda is supposed to be Malawi's most prolific social scientist, and to have him on our team is just a blessing. Really, the idea behind Logos Open Culture is to, again, really try as much as possible to tell our own stories as Malawians in particular, but also as Africans in general, and really going into the archives to really try and dig what stories reside in there and try to bring them up onto the mainstream. So one of our approaches is using what we call traditional storytelling. What you see in front of you are two book titles that we've published so far. They are available across the world, Barnes & Noble, Amazon, etc., etc. You can find them. And really, again, I think let me just zoom into the first title, which is Lomatinda, Rose Chiwambo Speaks. I think you can only see the Lomatinda part, but Rose Chiwambo is someone who's very, very important to the history of Malawi, but also to the history of women empowerment across the continent. She fought for independence in Malawi when Malawi was under British rule. She was mostly maybe the only woman in there fighting for this. In fact, she was put in jail 2 days after giving birth. So you can imagine being thrown in jail for over a year, 2 days after giving birth. And then when independence came to Malawi, she found herself in a prominent position in cabinet before she fell out of favor with the then president of Malawi, Kamuzubanda, and then she had to flee Malawi, and she was outside of Malawi for 30 years until 1994, when democracy sort of returned to Malawi. So someone like her, just her story wasn't, it wasn't in the public domain. She was put on the money towards the end of her. I think this is around 2010, 2011. She was put on one of the banknotes in Malawi, and most youngsters associated her as that pretty face on the money, and that was it. There wasn't really much to her story. It's simply because the youngsters didn't really know her story. The reason being that stories like hers, a lot of stories in Malawi are just not in the public domain. So one of the things that we try to do as Logos Open Culture is to really bring these stories into the public domain by going into the archives and publishing these books and using very good standards, because we want to, not only do we want to tell our stories, but we want to tell them using quality that can actually stand the world market. So it's quite a lot, quite a lot goes into our production around research. The second title you see is called Malawi Pressed Apart. It's a very good book on Malawi. If you're looking, if you want to read about Malawi, that's a nice introduction. It gives one a very good overview of how far the country has come, and some of the challenges, some of the successes, and some of the challenges. It's written by a foreigner. He was the Norwegian ambassador to Malawi for almost 10 years, but he's a very keen observer, and he's quite very understanding of our situation in Malawi when it comes to some of the challenges. When you look at the numbers across the world, Malawi being in the, I don't know, top 5 of 4 countries, around that narrative, he's very understanding, trying to bring all those factors into play. So I highly recommend, if you want to read about Malawi, this is a book to latch onto. But also, obviously, you give us a bit of money as well, which is always welcome. Our next title, which comes out, it comes out on Easter. It was supposed to come out this December, but the author is actually in Scotland. He's Malawian, but he's in Scotland, and he cannot fly until this whole COVID business has settled down. But the book is looking at the history of music in Malawi. Really trying to map the whole trajectory of music in Malawi, starting from the pre-colonial times to when the impact with Britain happened, bringing Malawi into the colonial period, and then beyond that, and how music has played a crucial role in the building of the social fabric that is modern day Malawi. So we're quite excited about that, and I'll come back to that book soon, because it kind of ties into what I'm into the narrative that I'm when I try to imagine newer narratives. What does that mean to me? Can I get the next slide, please? And then this is called the Malawian Histories and Medical Humanities. It's a digital repository which we did. This is now still Logos Open Culture, which we did with Dr. Kalinga, who's faculty at the University of Edinburgh, and in association with the University of Edinburgh. And again, really just exploring newer forms of publishing, really understanding that traditional publishing as we know it, it just can't cut it anymore. We need to find newer forms of, of preserving our stories, our memory, but also, sort of broadcasting our memory. And again, this is where now the computation part of Logos Open Culture, this is where now it comes in, where we're trying to use computing and bringing in arts, culture, and heritage, and to see how these strands can propel themselves forward. If you get a moment, just Google this repository. It's quite rich. It's got a lot of content there, and we're keen on capturing metadata. We haven't done that well in Malawi and across Africa when it comes to really taking care of what people call the commons. So these will be images or films or electronic records. Around the metadata, we haven't done a good job. So the other thing that we're doing as Logos Open Culture, and also for me personally as a storyteller, is to really put so much emphasis on capturing metadata and really trying to contextualize whatever it is that we're pushing into the public domain. Can I get the next slide, please? Now, the brief that I was given for this talk, which is to reimagine newer narratives. I've just emphasized 4 strands, which kind of feeds into what I believe it should be our focus as storytellers of who are African or pulling towards Africa, or who identify as African authors. One of the first one is really really trying to challenge the Eurocentric frame of reference, and really contextualizing that in the post-colonial narrative. Because one of the, I like to use this example for Malawi, for example, which is when David Livingstone, the famous Scottish explorer, came to Malawi, and he discovered, quote unquote, Lake Malawi, and gave it a name, Lake Nyasa in those days. And then this lake now assumes a newer, a new name under, Lake Nyasa, and then just, as a result, you get to a point where Livingstone, as an explorer, sort of, he challenges, his gaze overtakes the gaze of the locals in this very act of naming. And then with the passage of time, and thanks again, to this Eurocentric frame of reference, where things like Lake Malawi, they get to be defined from a gaze which is problematic. And so for me as a storyteller, being in a space to say that no, David Livingstone didn't have the right, to name things. And again, using that given that the people who were there, so this would be my ancestors, they were the first ones who were to deem this reality and give it a name. So to have a gaze come on top of that and, sort of supersede that, the agency that my ancestors had, I think storytelling can be used as a tool to try and, reclaim some of those historical mistakes, and storytelling being a very powerful tool as well in terms of around passing on memory and all of that. And also, I like to remember the words of Haile Gerima. Those of you who follow film in Africa, Haile Gerima was one of Africa's most brilliant filmmakers. If you can find Teza, one of his films, if you can search online for Teza, and then Haile Gerima says one needs to be selfish of one's own story. And for us as storytellers, as Africans, storytellers, we really need to own our own story and be selfish enough to really, to do what it takes to have our story in the public domain, as a way of righting some of the wrongs that have happened, but also just as a way of, of being. And again, like I said earlier, the second point, really emphasizing on creating metadata and just the means of storing these digital assets, because this is so important. In 2016, I did a project under Wiki Africa. I went into the National Archives of Malawi. We digitized a lot of content, some images, but there were no captions. And you can imagine the headache of that. And then the question becomes, how do we get to this point where we've got all these images spanning 60 years, for example, and we just don't have captions for them? We're just not doing our job properly. So for me as a storyteller, we really need to be keenly focusing on really, adding the metadata, the data that defines whatever subject we're dealing with, so that if someone comes 20 years from today, they'll be able to contextualize, those assets. Another point, again, is really putting focus on creating local ecosystems, thriving ecosystems. And again, using Malawi as a case in point, we as storytellers, the structures are just not in place. So you find that whatever industries we've got, whatever means we're trying to use to reach the world, we're not really being. We can do more if we can actually we can create, define, be in a space where we're able to create local systems where different sets of skills are coming together to produce quality products that the world can actually consume. So yeah, I would also really emphasize on that point. then my last point is just really just showing up on the global stage and really just being confident enough in our own stories to be, to say that we've got our own stories. We'll show up on the global stage and we'll tell our own stories. So, regardless of the forces that are acting against us. So I think that's about it for my part.
All right, fantastic, Muti. I think in the interest of time, can you hold on to some of your new storytelling, your new content that you're going to be releasing? We'll probably get into that in the Q&A section. So get ready for that one. But thank you so much. That was so interesting. And please feel free to ask me some questions in the chat section. We'll be doing a Q&A after all the speakers have gone through. But in the meantime, let's enjoy some sounds from Bilani Boo Boo with the second rendition of her song, while our next speaker, Kumba, gets ready. So let's enjoy. Bilani Boo Boo, it's your turn now. We're waiting for the beautiful voice of yours.
Beetle. Now this next traditional folk song is about a crab. Now the story about the crab is really funny because crabs, the mother crab tells the child crab to walk straight, but she herself can't exactly walk straight. So it's a little bit hypocritical. But essentially I've interpreted the song to say that, sometimes you don't have to walk straight to go forward. It's called Watidi Adonongana. Sideways walks the crab, wavering. He did that on purpose. Foundering, find me, wondering. Destiny is yours, no matter how precarious the path. Forward is not a linear path. Sideways walks the crab, wavering. He did that on purpose. Foundering, squandering, find me, wondering. Destiny is yours, no matter how precarious the path. Forward is not a linear path. And here it goes. Thank you.
Brilliant. I want to clap. Can I clap? That's absolutely brilliant. We'll check you again after our next speaker. In the meantime, we're going to be chatting to Kumba, who is an educator, facilitator, writer, trainer, manager, and coach, a feminist with more than 20 years of experience working for social change in Francophone West Africa. Bonjour, Kumba.
Bonjour.
See, I'm trying some French. Ça va bien et toi?
Merci, ça va très bien.
Fantastic. I'm trying really hard. Lovely to have you here. You may go on with your presentation and then we'll have our Q&A session afterwards.
Sorry? Yeah.
Maria Jara dendo kumbate sirankunye. Kojoni ni Johnny dendo. Seina bunja dendo kumbate sirankunye. Whose and whose child is it? I said, I am Bakaja Tambura's child. I am Maria Jara child. I am Sena Bunjai child. Kojoni ni Johnny dendo. Fire to redendo. Kumbate sirankonye. Whose child is it? I am Fire Toure's child, and this is why I'm not afraid. See, to those willing to carry the clay pot called Mu, I will give the power of balance, a sense of justice, said Mangalaba, the deity of deities at the beginning of creation. To those willing to carry the clay pot, I will give the power of balance, the sense of justice. They will come back again and again to give birth to new world, to new lives, said Mangalaba. See, I'm not gonna tell the whole story. You'll have to read the book. Muso is a story of creation, a feminist story of creation I wrote. In the beginning, song is just my own introduction, and I'm introducing myself to all of you, greeting you from wherever you are. And I identify myself in naming my mothers. My mother who gave birth to me, but all the other mothers who raised me 2 times from different countries, from different walks of life, and different mothers that taught me different things and made me who I am today. So if I need to make my bio or say who I am, I would name them. And if I told their stories, each of my mothers, then you would understand who I am and why I do what I do. but we won't dwell in that today. I want to share pieces, just small pieces of stories, but also how they come about and how they're connected to the conversation we're having today on new narrative. So Muso, the feminist story of creation, is actually it's a book for children. You can find it on Amazon, published by Daraja Press. It's in English. Is a myth, like most of the myth of creation. And it's one that I created. It's not a story I heard. You know, I remember places where I spoke it and people are like, whoa, where is that story from? Which ancient, you know, tradition did it come from? Like this today tradition. I'm making tradition right now. I'm creating a myth so that in the generation to come, it will become a tradition. So, because we know no tradition fell from the sky, because we know there is a beginning for everything. So as a feminist tired of, I guess, creation stories that basically do not give a nice role to women, I decided to make one so that our children can grow also with those type of stories. Ambamba nyini, fala dende, fala badende. We are looking for our mothers. We are looking for our mothers. This is a story of twin girls in search of their mothers. They were adopted by a beautiful woman, very dark, very black woman who traded beautiful cloth across the Sahel and who told them at the age of 13 that she was not their birth mother. So the twin girls set on a journey to look for their birth mother. And this was their song, that they went from village to village singing. And they had in their bag a piece of cloth, but only half of it, indigo cloth, that they were wrapped into when they were born. See, I will not tell the rest of that story either. The story of Baji and Sandy, twin girls, are another story that I wrote for children. It's a published book in French, also in English now. But that story is a traditional story of the Sahel. It's a story that you hear in the different version, a quest for the birth mother, the natural parents. But the story says in the end that you have multiple mothers, which is the theme of what I've been saying about, which is the truth also, that those who raise you are as much your parents as those who gave birth to you, that we understand motherhood and expand it beyond the physical giving birth. That story, in the way it's written, is a very different origin or way of writing than Muso, the one that I just referred to before, because that one is a story that is known. Now, what is different in the way that I write it? See, in one of my languages, I guess my mother tongue, my first language, my mother's language, Bamana, which is the language of the people of Mali, but it's a language that is spoken in many places across West Africa, in Ivory Coast, in Burkina Faso, in Guinea. It's part of the family of the Mandingo language. You can tell a story without telling the gender of the main character. I can tell the twin story of these twins looking for their mothers from beginning to end, make the song, say everything. And in the end of the story, people who listen to it will make what they want of the character. They can decide if the character is female or male, or if it's both, or whatever. But when you translate that story in French or English, it's impossible to write the story without it being gendered. And I realized that in many of the traditional stories, when we read it, when it's written, and we read it from the books and the language of our colonizers, sorry, I lost you for a minute. But when you use the language of the colonizers, you have to put a gender. And I realized that most of the time, people who transcribe or wrote those stories generally were men. So they always change. They always change the stories and put them in, put the characters becomes all of a sudden all male. So just saying that process, what I did with the twin story was to go against basically how it was always written in this area, because the twins are always boy. I made them girl. I changed the characters. And again, of course, you will see the feminist part of this choice. I'll end with a third example. In this story, this is a story that is 4,000 years old. Okay? 4,000 years old. A story of a peasant that is going from his village and going to the city of Kemet in Egypt. And on the way, a representative of the government, somebody that would be a policeman today, stops him because the peasant has a lot of nice goods and he's going to sell them to buy a few other things. And the police wants the goods of the peasant. So he tricks him and forces him to start taking his goods. I won't tell the whole story, but just something so that you can go in and get the books. I didn't write this story. It's a story written by scribes in Egypt. It's written in hieroglyphs, but I'm lucky to be with people where I live who reads the hieroglyph and decide to translate this story in 11 languages, including Hausa, Bambara, Portuguese. And you can read this story. And I'll talk more about story in the discussion, because I feel like this is where I'm going. This is the source I'm going towards, getting into the older stories and learning about how not only injustice is old, but the resistance is old also. It says the story about using poetry and art 4,000 years ago to seek justice. And I think it is in the tradition that we are continuing today. I see your face and understand that my time is up.
You know me too well, Kumba. You know me too well. I just got goosebumps with your presentation.
I'll stop here and I'll come back in the questions time and with other examples. But I'm just happy to be here, and I thank everyone who is taking the time to hear us today.
That was fantastic. Thank you so much for that, Kumba. While Pilani Bubu gets ready, I've got a question for you, Kumba. You were mentioning quite a lot of, the work that you were doing, and you kept saying, I won't give you everything. You must buy the book. Can you give us some of the names of the book while Pilani gets ready?
Yes. Muso, A Story of Creation. I'll type it in. The Story of Creation. If you type my name, Kumba Ture, on Amazon, it's the only book you'll find of me. It's a children's book. You can find it, The Story of Creation by Kumba Ture, Muso, M-U-U-M-O. Muso means women. You can go, and I'll type that also on bbkwan.com. It's a store. So you will find Per Ankh books. And that's the book I'm referring to, about the 4,000 years old story, written and translated in Akan, Bambara, English, Kikongo, Kiswahili, Lingala, Portuguese, Pular, Wolof, and Zulu. It's in the same book. It's a short text, but each page is one line in all of those languages. But there are many, many other books like this, but also books by Aikwe Arma. Those of you who know him, 2000 Seasons, The Beautiful Ones Are Not Yet Born, Kemet, Osiris Rising, you name it. He's an amazing and prolific writer. You'll find Theophile Obenga, African Philosophy, on that store. It's Per Ankh Books.
Fantastic. Thanks for sharing. Thank you so much for sharing. That was phenomenal. All right, so I do believe that Pilani Bubu is on standby. So let's enjoy some music while our last but not least final speaker, everybody gets ready.
Thank you, Noni. The first two tracks were about animals, traditional folk songs about animals, poetically interpreted. This next song is about how the boys go to the mountain for their rite of passage to manhood. In my culture, that's something we still do. I wanted to express the vulnerability and the anxiety that we sisters and mothers feel when this happens, just to tell a different side of the story. Because we don't often tell that side. Though this song is about boys fighting with sticks, what else happens while we wait, right? Here's my interpretation. Since he took his rite of passage up the hills, down the valley to become a man. 4 weeks, a mountain of anxiety, a mother's sleepless nights, on the inside strong, on the outside vulnerable. Is this what it takes to become a man? Slashed skins, fallen foreskins, rat wounds at the tip of his manhood. A boy no more. Achika makweg, achikele mkotin. Ingabe uzolibona ilanga, ingabe uzovuka engafanga, morning finally broke. Mothers awoke to a sea of blankets and sticks. Naked, the faces of men painted white. A warrior's mask. What became of him? What will he be? What will he see? Akweta makwekwe, akweta makweta, wangena madoda. Yo, yo,
You don't have award-winning behind your name for nothing. You are phenomenal. I just felt my spirit transcending. I don't know where to, but somewhere. That was fantastic. All right, so next up, we have our next speaker. His name is Anirban. He's a filmmaker, still photographer, and media educator based in Delhi, India. He started his career in television in 1996 and set up the film company Metamorphosis in 2003. He's directed and produced several documentary films and created many photographic essays on diverse topics such as children's rights, biodiversity, environmental issues, health, gender, sexuality, and the list goes on. All the way from India. Hello, Anirban. Oh, you just muted there.
Can you hear me now?
There we go. Fantastic. How are you? All the way from India.
Yeah, thank you so much. And thank you so much for inviting me. And I feel very privileged to be able to speak here. And it was my dream to communicate with all of you. So thank you very much. And a big thank you to Muchi and Kumba. And I think, you know, they kind of set the platform for me to take the conversation forward. So my work started, I started working about 2 decades ago. And I felt as a creative person that my storytelling skills were getting curtailed by working in a corporate setup where I was going to tell the stories that I was told to tell. So in 2003, I kind of liberated myself and I decided that I'm going to go to places in India and in South Asia where people at that time were not going because they were so-called quote-unquote media dark areas and we didn't get stories from there. There were multiple reasons for this. One was that many of these places had a long history of armed conflict. And people and storytellers, filmmakers did not feel safe going there. There were other issues like remote places in Eastern Himalayas. You know, many other, there were civil, you know, there were law and order issues in many parts. So my first destination was to go to the northeastern parts of India, which was the remote foothills in the northeastern part on the Indo-Myanmar border, in a place called Manipur and Nagaland, where I went. And initially, though we were so-called from the same country, I was addressed as an Indian. And I was told that you are an outsider. Why have you come here? And there was a historical reason for it, because the people there did not feel part of the Indian mainstream. At that time, I felt that I had to stay there for long periods of time for me to understand people as well as for them to understand me. And my idea as an outsider to jump in with the camera or with the equipment to tell a story just did not think right. And that was my first learning, that I have to embed myself in the community that I am going to tell the story from, so that I am accepted and I understand the nuances of the community. So for about, it is 15 years now that I keep going back there. It is only after 11 years of going there, I felt that I could tell a story from there. And for that 11 years that I kept on going back there, I worked with young people, I worked with young adults, I worked with women, and I gave them a little learning that I had was to how to use a camera. But from them, I heard a lot of stories. I heard their songs, I heard their music, and I think I learned more from them than what I could give back to them. And from there started my long association, where the young people from the community started making short videos. The young people, the women from the community started making small photo essays. And then we would take these stories and videos and we would go from one village to another in a vehicle with a small TV in those days and a DVD player. And we would have more than one DVD player because of the jerk in the car, in the vehicle, because there was almost, that was almost non-motorable. The DVD players would break down and we would have a small Jenny, and many a times we would have a screening at night in a church or in a small community place where there will be 200 people, 300 people who would come to see these videos. And there would be a conversation after that. And one little film will start a sequence of storytelling. There will be more and more stories that will be shared. And that was my first understanding that how, though I theoretically understood that stories are a part of our life, but for the first time I understood how one story leads to another, to another, to another. And a lot of this is part of our oral tradition. And that is why our common heritage, whether it's an Asian heritage or an African heritage, we have so rich tradition, such rich tradition of oral history and oral narratives. And a lot of our stories are told through songs. There is not one version of one story. There are multiple versions of the same story told from various points of view. I started understanding this. And I'm going to share one clip from one of the films that I was asked to make by a woman from the community. She came and told me that her husband was HIV positive and she had passed away and he had passed away and she was not getting her property rights. And she told me that could I help her make a film, and through that can she start a conversation with many other women in the state who had the same fate, who were having similar experience, and she wanted to put herself and her story in the camera. And I went and lived in her village to record this story. And I would like Noni, if you can ask Kumu to share the clip, and the clip will be from 1:30 to 4:30, please. If you could share the clip. That's all right. We can start from here. Yeah, that's okay. Can you make it full screen, please? Okay, okay, start from here. That's all right.
ল'ৰাটোকে একো এটা দি পঠোৱা নাই আৰু মোক দিয়াটোতো ডাঙৰে কথা আৰু মোৰ নাম নৱনীতা শইকীয়া ঘৰ গোলাঘাট কমাৰগাঁও আৰু ডিষ্ট্ৰিক্ট গোলাঘাট পৰে মোৰ বিয়া হৈছিলে 2001ত আৰু মানুহজন ঢুকাইছে 2004 মানুহজনৰ লগত আমি সদায় মানুহজনে মোৰ ডাইভিং কৰিছিলে নিজৰ মানুহজনেও নকলে মোক তেখেত যে এজন পজিটিভ আছিলে কিন্তু ঘৰত আহিহে গম পাইছোঁ মই তেখেত এজন পজিটিভ আছিল আহি মানে নিজৰ ব্লাডটো টেষ্ট কৰাই ল'লোঁ আৰু টেষ্ট কৰাই গম পাইছোঁ যে হয় মই এগৰাকী হিচাপে পজিটিভ আৰু বাচ্চাটো পজিটিভ উলট দিবে নাই বাই বাই কে দে ডাঙৰটো ককাই হেঁতি জানে হয় ডাঙৰটো ককাইও জানে ঘৰত থকাটোও জানে ভিনদেউৱে তাৰমানে ই আগতীয়াকৈ গম পাইছিলে কথাটো পাইছিলে চাগে পাছত আকৌ সিহঁতি হেৰি কি কয় লখিমপুৰ হস্পিটেল নিওঁতেওতো গম পাইছে চাগে ক'ত তাততো টেষ্টটো পৰীক্ষা কৰিছে পৰীক্ষা কৰোঁতে ক'ত গম নোপোৱাকৈ আছেনো নাই কোৱা মোক মোৱাৰ পাছতো কোৱা নাই মই ঘৰলৈ অহালৈকেও নক'লে মোক সেইটো কথা পৰিৱেশৰ লগত ইয়াৰ পৰিৱেশবিলাক তাৰ পৰিৱেশৰ লগত কি আৰু কিছুমান কেতিয়াবা একে ফুৰে আৰু যেতিয়া মায়ে কেতিয়াবা পইচা নাই বুলি ক'লে যেনেকুৱা খাগৰ দিয়ে মনটোত দুখ লাগি যায়
Okay, we can stop here. Okay, the point that I was trying to make here was that there are many kinds, films can be made in various different ways. But I somehow felt that for me to stay for long durations with the community made me feel that I could possibly represent the story. And sometimes the gaze with which the stories are told and the gaze, I was kind of questioning the gaze with which the narrative was being represented. And to bring the community into my storytelling process, my filmmaking process, made me more comfortable with the story that I was going to put out there in the world. So that is my approach. And this is what I have followed in the last 17 years of my work. And my primary concern is to create multiple storytellers. and storytellers from the community, from various places which are from where we don't get to hear stories. So that has taken me to Nepal, in South Asia, in Bangladesh, in Sri Lanka, and of course in various parts of India. And one of my major interests right now is to come to Africa and to work and possibly, you know, see if I can find collaborators and partners with whom I can jointly create an environment for finding new, powerful African storytellers. And that is my passion, actually, to make more and more storytellers in the world. And the more storytellers we have, the more the colonizers gaze that, you know, that Muchi was talking about, or Kumba was talking about. We have to own our own stories. We have to own our own narratives. And that is the only way to challenge the gaze or challenge the representation that we have gone through. And there is no other way to do it. And when I say this, you know, I had a wonderful exchange and wonderful experience of sharing, you know, time with Professor Olabibi Iwai, the Benin scholar, and he also told me about the Yoruba culture and the Yoruba storytelling tradition, the elders, and I also felt that, you know, so many of our storytellers from Africa are very old. You know, we need to record these stories. We need to archive these stories. We need to preserve these stories, because with this, we will lose our wisdom. We will lose our, you know, you know, it is just not story. There is so much of knowledge that is embedded in that story. So I think, you know, that is where I am, that is what I am interested in right now. And along with this, I also work on music. So presently, I'm also developing an archive in India, because as we have become a so-called, you know, from developing, we are becoming a big economy. You know, a lot of stuff is getting lost in this whole craziness of modernization. And a lot of the old things are being chucked away. So a lot of music has also got lost. So I am also putting together with my friend Anupama Srinivasan, she is online right now. We are trying to collect songs. We are trying to create an archive of music that will be there for people to study and research later. And I think that is something that is also, I feel very, very passionately about even African music and African storytelling tradition. So, you know, that is what my journey has been. The films that I was talking about, you know, those films that the community members made, we took them to about more than 350 villages. And every 2-3 days, we had screenings at night, and the communities had conversations around. And we were not only hearing a lot of stories, but we were also linking people to certain services that they needed, whether it was health, whether it was legal advice, whether it was you know, educational, you know, people, the children, the kind of challenges that they were facing in terms of education, in terms of access to employment. So we were creating, we were trying to, you know, open little windows for dialogues. I think that is what stories can do. That is what films can do, open windows for dialogue. And the last but not the least is that, you know, which I have already talked about, is that I'm going to show you a film that we are in the post-production right now. This film happened after visiting the same area for almost 13-14 years. Anupama and I started shooting a film 5 years ago about a small village which for about 70 years after Indian independence had not got electricity. And they hear that the electricity was on its way, and the village starts waiting for electricity. And that might be a story that might resonate with my friends in Africa. So I would like you to see the trailer of the film, and you know, and then possibly we can open it up for discussion after that. So here it goes. I will play the trailer of the film and have a look.
हाँ अंदर में कितना देर चल रहा है 30 minutes फिर मैं इतना ज्यादा काम करना बहुत थक गया इसलिए होटल बना के करके रहना चाहिए ना मैंने बोला गंजा मत करो छोड़ देगा पक्का 무슨 뜻이 저거 걸루가 상마 따위에 거기는 뭐 따로 상 뭐야 왜
electricity 미래 디비지나 아나더라 선리빈에 하나 없는 장식 잡아요 아나더 선러가 사과파이지 잠자가 영화가로 그림은 쟁을
나도 내가지고 싫어?
And Arpan, unfortunately, we might have to just cut it there in the interest of time. I know it is a trailer, but surely if you can share in our chat section where we can get the rest of the trailer, then we'll watch it in our own time.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to talk. So yeah, I'm done.
Fantastic. Thank you so much to all our speakers. I mean, time truly does fly. So thank you so much for sharing all your fantastic work. And Arpan, you mentioned you wanted to do some collaborations with some African artists. I saw Muti saying, come to Malawi, let's work together. And I'm sure Kumba would also be very interested because she's all about song, as you heard in her presentation. She says, thumbs up. She's more than happy to collaborate with you. This is fantastic. Thank you so much. I had the time of my life today. And just please make sure that you register. If you are in the session, you register for other sessions that are coming up. They are titled Reimagining New Media and Voices and Reimagining Policy and Governance. So please make sure you go to the urbanfestival.co page to register for those sessions. And then please also make sure you follow CTIN for the up and coming events that they're going to have, just like this one. So I've had the time of my life, and I know that Pilani Bubu is on standby for the last performance. If you do want to enjoy her in full view, please make sure that you click on the 3 buttons on the frame of Pilani's Zoom, and then you'll be able to see her fully. This has been a fantastic session, and I guess we'll see you again next week for another session. Cheers.
Bye.
out and they come back and disrespect their women. So it talks about gender-based violence, domestic violence, and building good homes. We've seen them come, we've seen them go. Not all is fair in love and war. If you win, then we will lose. We have to find a win for two or three or more.
Fantastic. That was beautiful. We'll see you at the next session. It's called Reimagining New Media and Voices. Check you later.
Jerusalema ikhaya lami ilondoloze uhambe nami zungangishilana Jerusalema ikhaya lami ilondoloze uhambe nami zungangishilana dawo yami ayikholana buso wami awukholana ilondoloze zuhambe nami dawo yami ayikholana buso wami awukholana ilondoloze ayikholana buso wami awukholana ilondoloze zuhambe nami dawo yami ayikholana buso wami awukholana ilondoloze zuhambe nami Jerusalem